Let's talk today about something that is really, really integral in making evolved NLP evolved. And that is the power of forgiveness. Now, in traditional NLP, neuro linguistic programming, there's really no mention of forgiveness, aside from one of the presuppositions of NLP. So, one of the sort of foundational beliefs in doing this work is that people are not their behaviors and that everybody is doing the best they can with the resources they have available. Now, those are fundamental parts of NLP, and they sort of presuppose forgiveness. But in and of itself, traditional NLP doesn't have forgiveness. And for us at Avalon, that was a bit of a problem because forgiveness is a huge part of our work. In fact, we believe that forgiveness is the most powerful change agent on the planet. Now, perhaps you are somebody who readily and easily forgives. Perhaps you're somebody who has a hard time forgiving. I just want to touch on a couple of these scenarios because if you're a coach working with a client and taking them from problem into solution, if you remember that from my last video, if you're a coach working with a client on a transformational coaching journey and forgiveness isn't a core part of your work, then I really, really want you to listen because forgiveness is super important to any process of change. What does forgiveness do? Forgiveness can change the person's experience of their experience. And so let's say your client had a negative experience in their life or a series of negative experiences. How they look back on the past and what they've been able to draw from that is their model of the world. It's their experience of that experience. What forgiveness can do is help them remold and reshape the past so that they have a different context for experiencing some of the hints of the past that can show up in the future. So forgiveness gives a person a different experience of the experience. It's really, really powerful. And there's a couple of things you need to know about forgiveness. Number one, and this is one of the biggest myths about forgiveness, okay? Choosing to forgive somebody is not necessarily about the other person. It can be, but it's really a gift to you. Or if you're a coach, helping your clients learn how to do a process of forgiveness is about them claiming back their power, okay? So when I say a process of forgiveness, I mean, forgiveness is a part of my daily life. It's a part of my family values. For us at Avalon, it's a part of our business values. We live our lives with forgiveness as a very high-ranking value because freedom, the only true way to freedom is through forgiveness. Now, forgiveness doesn't mean that I have to break bread with somebody at Sunday dinner next week. That's not what forgiveness is at all. Forgiveness is about saying I'm accepting what was and I'm willing to accept the person exactly as they are. Doesn't mean that they have to be my BFF anymore. Doesn't mean that we have to hang out. It's not just water under the bridge. There were lessons there. Sometimes we have to remove unhealthy people from our lives. Sometimes there are boundaries that prevent you from having a relationship. That doesn't mean that you should be prevented from forgiving, okay? So forgiveness is incredibly powerful. I love Oprah Winfrey has done a lot of work around forgiveness, and a lot of her episodes on the Oprah show were focused on forgiveness. And I loved what I heard on her show once, and that was that forgiveness is letting go of the hope that the past could have been anything other than what it was. The past is in the past. You can't do anything about that. Forgiveness is letting go of the hope that it could have been different, which gives you freedom in the present moment and the power to create something entirely different moving forward. Now, when it comes to forgiveness, you have to teach people some of these things, because some people would say, there's no way I'll forgive. That person doesn't deserve to be forgiven. They don't deserve my forgiveness. Or how could somebody do such a thing? Now, that's their paradigm. That's the person's box. And anytime you challenge that, anytime you challenge somebody's paradigm and say, actually, it's okay to forgive that, that can feel scary. That can feel shaky. We don't like to have our paradigms or our models of the world challenged. So you really have to work inside of your client's model of the world, okay? Number one presupposition of NLP is respect the client's model of the world. Work inside of it, loosen their model of the world, and then help them resolve the problem. It's actually very easy to do the change work, but you have to get inside their model of the world, acknowledge that what happened wasn't okay, talk about how it's affecting them in the present, and then give them the frames around why forgiveness is probably not what they've always thought it was and what it really means instead. Forgiveness is reclaiming your power. Forgiveness is keeping the past in the past where it belongs, so that that person can no longer wield the same power over them in the future. I believe it was Nelson Mandela that said refusing to forgive is like drinking a vial of poison and expecting the other person to drop dead. Okay, so lack of resolution and lack of forgiveness has detrimental effects on the body. It keeps us caught in lower vibrational emotions like anger and shame and guilt and sadness, grief, resentment, all of those things. Choosing to forgive is giving our bodies even cellular freedom. It's not just about the emotions attached to it. When it comes to forgiveness, though, there's 3 people that you always need to forgive. Number 1, the person that harmed them. Okay, so they need to forgive. The first person is the person that harmed you or the person that did something wrong. Number 2 are the people that could have stepped in or that could have been more supportive at the time and didn't. Person who could have done something about it and didn't. And then the third, and this is the most important person, so listen, listen, listen. The third person that you always need to forgive is yourself. I know you might be saying, for what? But I promise you, when you take somebody through this process of forgiving the 3 people, by the end of it, sometimes it's saying, I forgive myself for buying into that old story. Maybe there was somebody from the past, a teacher who said they weren't smart enough, that they weren't good enough, that they would never amount to anything. Well, forgive the teacher, forgive parents or other caregivers who didn't step in and do something about it. And then they have to forgive themselves for ever believing that old lie, forever believing that they weren't enough or that they weren't powerful. Right? And that third person is the most important person. Now, here's the other thing. For the people that, that feel like it's not okay to forgive, I've already talked about what to do with them. But here's the other one, and this one's kind of tricky. Some people are not like that at all. Some people say, no, 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 I forgive. I'm the most forgiving person. I'm one of these people, right? Like, I'll forgive. I forgive easily. Like, there's no point in hanging on to anger. There's no point hanging on to the resentment. I want to live my life. I want to move forward. And that's fine and lovely and wonderful and dandy, as long as they're acknowledging what happened and acknowledging the emotions that were connected to it. Okay, so there are people, and they're the bypassers. There's the hangers on who cling to the anger and cling to the old resentments. And then there's the bypassers who just try to skip all of that stuff. That's what I used to be. My MO was skip the uncomfortable feelings, like get betrayed or get hurt, skip over all of the uncomfortable stuff, put on a smile because there's no point in hanging on to that. That is actually just as unhealthy, but they talk a good game. The bypassers, the skippers, they talk a good game, right? You talk to them and it's like, oh no, I had my partner cheated on me. They stole everything I had. I got into a car accident, lost my house, whatever. Like, dog was dog napped, but it's okay. Like, there's no point in hanging on to that. I'm forgiving it. I'm moving on. Those people aren't going to get any more of my time. They had their own issues. They have their own stories. All of those things are true, by the way. Those people do have their own issues. They do have their own stories. And I'm sure if you looked at their cycles and the way that trauma has manifested in their lives, they have that stuff connected to it too. But it's not about them, right? So bypassers will often make it about, well, yes, so-and-so betrayed me, but if you knew where they came from and there's so much trauma in history, okay, totally appreciate and respect all of that. But what feelings are you trying to bypass? There's anger, there's betrayal, there's sadness. And what is the healthy expression of them? So in order to authentically forgive, you really do need to acknowledge, and there's easy ways to do this. This is not something that needs to take months or years or even weeks. Like, this can be a simple process of acknowledging what was actually wrong, how it wasn't okay. And I'm not saying to acknowledge it face to face, because chances are those people are not going to change. But what if you were to sit down and write a letter that you never put in the mail, that had all like just allow the emotion, allow yourself to connect to the emotion and spill it out and put it down on paper and then tear it up and go outside and safely light it on fire and let it burn and let the smoke signal up to the heavens that you're choosing to let this go. What if you were to actually just sit and allow the tears to flow in a timed and controlled way? There's different ways of doing it, but as a coach, you can't clear what a person won't acknowledge. Right? I can't clear the shame or the rage or the anger of the past if my client won't acknowledge those emotions. So part of the coaching process is then to get into their model of the world. And I appreciate that you don't want to hang on to those things. And I respect that, that there's no point in getting caught up in it. And at the same time, right now, I know that you've never acknowledged that and that it probably feels really scary and really terrifying because you're not comfortable with difficult emotions. And you're not comfortable with them probably because you were told not to feel them in the first place at a very young age. But let's do that now in a really safe, beautiful, controlled way. And you coach them through that. And however you do that is how you do that. But you coach them through it. And then you take them through the forgiveness process where they forgive the people, they forgive the person who hurt them, the person who should have stepped in and didn't, and then forgive themselves. And in that context, forgiveness becomes authentic and powerful and highly, highly transformational. So in evolved NLP, forgiveness is kind of a big deal. It's why we have processes like coaching processes that are entirely based on forgiveness. Forgiveness is worked into our parts integration and our quantum time release, and it's the entire basis for the quantum change process. And these are all tools that our coaches use to help their clients experience radical change, radical results in a very, very short time because they are very skilled tour guides and Sherpas of forgiveness work. So I hope that you got something out of this. And if you have any questions or want to reach out, you can do that on Facebook via DM or just book a call and we'll hop on a call and talk about how Evolved NLP could help your coaching practice too. Thanks a lot.